Evening and welcome to Divine Table Talk from Pain to Purpose with Dr. Rhonda Smith. Dr. Rhonda Smith is a certified adult nurse practitioner, a doctor of naturopathy, a certified life coach, and a certified clinical trauma professional, credentialed in behavioral health, specializing in addiction. She is the owner and CEO of both Renewal Healthcare Services and Divine Core Transformation. Dr. Rhonda has authored 3 books, 2 of which she also published. She has an online school named the Academy of Hope Foundation, which provides education and prevention programs. Rhonda serves as a member on the board of Ohio Reentry Program for ex-offenders. She is a volunteer at the Dayton Correctional Institution and is a member of the Dayton, Ohio chapter of the Links Incorporated. She serves as a board member of Women in Christian Leadership, board member of Girl Scouts of Western Ohio, and is an honoree of the WIBN Powerful Women of Impact 2022. Rhonda is passionate about doing her part in helping to restore women to wholeness. In her current practice, she coaches many women who are or have been involved in abusive and or toxic relationships. As such, she made the decision to go deeper and study the pathology of toxic relationships. This resulted in her training with renowned psychotherapist Ross Rosenberg, who trained Rhonda on the human magnet syndrome model. Her motto is, I don't look like what I've been through, and I have God to thank for that. Welcome
Amen.
Again to the show.
Amen. So hello, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us for the Divine Table Talk. I like to start with a little bit of housekeeping. So people are going to be muted and their videos are going to be off because we talk about sensitive discussions. And so we're going to record it. So if people want to come back and listen to it later, they'll be able to go to the library for those kind of resources. So that's why you're off right now. But once Misty and I get done, we will turn the cameras on, whoever wants to be on, and we'll turn the video on. I mean, the microphone on if you want to ask questions. So we're going to get started. First, I want to tell you that Divine Table Talk is a place that God gave me to do for people so that people could be safe in a safe place. We discuss a lot of things that can be embarrassing, it can be painful, and it can be shameful. But we do it so that people can educate themselves and others on the topics that we talk about. Tonight's topic is going to be From Pain to Purpose. And I would like to introduce my guest, Misty Layne. Misty Layne went from being a Texas beauty queen at the brink of becoming a surgeon to facing a 40-year prison sentence for neglect homicide. Cocaine and domestic abuse led her to horrific rock bottom. She transparently describes her in her best-selling book, What Goes Up. She is now an empowerment and resiliency expert, instilling confidence in others to step up and speak out. So their story can change your life tomorrow. She transformed lives through her talk show, Dare to Share with Misty Layne, through her Right to Ignite Women's Empowerment retreats, her Speak Out workshops, her collaborative books, and her tween esteem camps for ages 9 to 12-year-old girls. Additionally, she practices nuclear medicine full-time and serves as a VP on the Chemo Buddies for Life nonprofit board. Misty was named the Global Achiever in 2021, nominated Women of the Year 2020, placed 3rd in the Global Next Impactor competition, and won the 2021 Rising Star. I would like to introduce you. I met Misty at Women Fearless Summit. And when I heard her story, I tell you, it blew me away. So I'm so happy for what you're doing, Misty. I thank you for being with us in Women in Christian Leadership and sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Dr. Rhonda.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's been an incredible journey.
It sure has. It sure has. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, you pretty much just wrapped it up right there. We all have a story to tell. All of us have been through something or another, right?
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I've come to the point now where it's really not even about my story. It's not even about the adversity. It's truly about what I'm doing on the other side of it, the surviving side of adversity. We're all going to have those bumps in the road, but how we choose to come back, the lessons we choose to learn, when we learn to take those blinders off and see God saved us for a reason, and start living in his purpose and start living on his mission and on his time, then everything changes, or at least it did for me. And that's what I hope and pray happens for the people that, hear me talk, is that they understand the old saying, there's light at the end of the tunnel. You can thrive on the other side of adversity. You can. So my story, as you heard me speak on stage that day, I've been through some stuff, I've been through some stuff. And I just like to give back to women, especially. I tell people, out of everything, even, me killing someone behind crack cocaine, even with that on the plate, I think the hardest thing, which is why I had such an affinity to you, Dr. Rhonda, and when you spoke, the same I felt about you, is domestic abuse. I think has been the hardest thing for me to recover from. All those physical scars on the outside, the bruises, the bumps, the broken noses, those things heal. But those words cut so deep, and they just affect us. And they manipulate us to the point where we start feeling those things about ourselves. And that took me a long time. And I'm still going through it. There's still days that, I have to remind myself I'm worthy, I'm lovable.
That's right.
And that's been one of the hardest things. I don't know if you want me to share my whole story. If you want to just ask me, to focus on certain things, it's your show. You lead the way.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about when you first noticed that you was in a toxic relationship, because you were married in medical school.
So, I used to say that I was picking the wrong men, and that, it was everybody else's fault. They were an alcoholic. Right. They were addicted to porn. They were cheaters. They were liars. It was them.
Right.
And I came to the realization after my fourth failed marriage, that my picker was broken, that I wasn't picking a man good enough for me. I wasn't raising the bar. I'd gone through all this work and healed myself and learned to love myself, which isn't a conceited thing. It's a love thing. You have to learn to love the temple God gave you, right? And to treat it with respect. And I just wasn't allowing myself to be around those people. I have a great analogy I'd love to share. I'm sure someone out there will find this very beneficial. If you think of yourself, if you're in a bad spot right now, and with domestic abuse, it was definitely a bad spot. You're at the bottom of the ocean. I consider that you're like a catfish. You're a bottom feeder, we call them. So it's really dark and murky. The water's muddy. So the only other fish you're ever going to be around are the same bottom feeding fish, right? The other dark, murky fish that are eating all the old food, the decayed stuff that's dropped down from above. But as you start to heal and you become prettier fish, a better fish, you rise up in the ocean, and now the sunlight can hit you, and you see that you've got beautiful colors on you and sparkling with those scales on you. And now you're getting some of the fresh food that comes down from the top of the ocean. And now you see other fish that are better fish. So it's all about, you have to do the work yourself first. Absolutely. And heal and put yourself at that level and not expect anything less from anyone around you.
Right.
And that's what I came to realize. Took me a long time to get there, but it's easy to point that finger. I want to blame my last husband on his porn addiction to being the reason we didn't last. And it's not the reason. The problem is he had a porn addiction when I met him. I didn't know it. But I was trying to make him be something he wasn't. And I
Right.
finally just got to the point. I said, you know what? I don't want you to not watch porn because of me. If that's what you want, then I need to realize you're just not the man for me. You
Right.
don't serve the same God I serve. So we're not, this isn't working. And I put the
Hmm.
blame back on myself and I moved on. So
Hmm. And that's so
mindset has
important
a lot.
because a lot of us stay in those relationships because we don't want to know that it's us. And you have to feel the pain to get through. People don't want to do that. So a lot of times they stay. And I think a lot of times they stay because of trauma, the trauma connection. It's like, well, I feel like I just have to be here because they're people pleasers. So you're right. You have to do the work. And if you don't do the work, do you think you'll end up with the same person, just a different mask on?
Yeah. Well, they say the grass isn't green on the other side, right? You're still going to have
Right.
issues. It may not be the same issues, but there's still going to
Right.
be something. And look, life isn't perfect. I mean, we're, like I said in the beginning, we're all going to have stuff, right? We're all going to, it's
Right.
just how we handle it, how we choose to move through it, and what we learn. Like I said in the
Hmm.
beginning, what we learn on the other side of adversity. So, everything I've been through, a 10-year horrific crack cocaine addiction, killing someone behind it, going to prison, facing 40 years, going from medical school to a 40-year prison sentence. I just had to come to the point and realize that I was saved for a reason. I should have
That's
died
right.
out there on those streets
That's
many
right.
times over. The situations I put myself in, doing all those things that I said I would never do behind crack cocaine. And I came to realize, God saved me.
That's
And
right.
it wasn't to remain silent or hide behind the shame. It was to use my voice and get out there and educate people so that we could judge less and mentor more.
Absolutely. And that's what I love what you're doing with these girls because instilling self-esteem and love at an early age, then they can recognize,
Yeah,
these relationships because it starts in your core. So I think that's just great.
thank
Um,
you.
so tell me about, because you told me already, I listened to it, but it was wonderful. So you got to the point because I remember you saying that you couldn't believe that I think your husband may have had an affair and it hurt. Um,
Oh,
you,
in the
you were,
beginning, yes.
yeah. And because a lot of times people get so full of pain and hurt that they go to something to help them with that pain, whether it's alcohol or
Hmm.
drugs or whatever, because it numbs it. And then once it numbs it, we need
Hmm.
more and more and more of that.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think you said that's what happened. You were in a car or something, right?
Well, for me, it was, growing up in the pageant system in Texas, I was very confident. I was very proud. I was very outspoken, happy. I would, kind of looked at the world like they say in rose-colored glasses. I didn't see any ugly in the world because I
That's
hadn't been
right.
around it.
Right.
And so when he cheated on me, instantly I internalized and said, well, it must be my fault. I'm not pretty enough, smart enough, I'm not good enough in bed, whatever it is, it's my fault, right? Instead of
Right.
looking at what the real problem was.
Hmm.
And so I just kind of like went into a deep depression. And the first person that validated me and made me feel pretty, made me feel smart, made me feel something, I went for that person, whether they were the caliber of person I needed in my life or not. It was the attention I needed. You know, my whole life growing up in
Right.
dancing and pageantry, that's, people pleasing. That's what I knew. That was my thing. So, first guy I got involved with introduced me to cocaine. 7 months into our relationship, I had no idea he was doing it. And he would start missing in action. He would go away 3 or 4 days at a time. And again, I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? He's pulling away. He must not, it's
Hmm.
because I have little babies. What's the problem? And then I learned that he was smoking crack cocaine. So here I am, just devastated. I had already pulled out of medical school at this point because my life was out of control, just from depression. And I thought, what is so great about this drug? Because I was hit by a drunk driver when I was 14. So I was never that person. Like in high school, I was the good girl. I didn't go out partying and get drunk. I didn't smoke weed. I didn't, it wasn't my scene. So I was so curious, and I'm like, what is so wonderful that it pulls you away from what I thought, me and my kids were great. And I thought to myself, well, actually, that's the problem. I didn't respect that moment of choice, and I didn't think. I impulsively tried it. And it was something about that being bad that drew me into it. It was like I did everything right and it's gotten me nowhere. So I want to see what it's like to be bad, and I wanted to be bad. I wanted to let people down. I got so tired of being on that pedestal and that constant pressure. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be this. You're going to have the perfect family. You're going to live in the perfect house, from everyone else, that I just wanted to escape it and just be whoever I wanted to be. And that high of the cocaine is what gave me that escape. And that's what I got addicted to very quickly.
Okay. I remember you talking about that. Yeah. And then also, Misty, I love the fact that God turned it around for you. You were facing 40 years, but God.
Yeah. I actually just wrote a chapter in a book called She is an Overcomer. And the title is But God, because
wow.
You go back and you
I didn't even know that was the title.
That's true. You go back and you reflect and you think, I should have done this, but God, or this should have happened, but God, or these people shouldn't talk to me, but God. And it just, that I ended up naming it But God, because it is. That's the truth.
I love it.
I was, my story is so vast. There's so many pieces to it. I'll try to give you a taste of it so you can understand why this is so relevant. But when I was out there on the streets, my son's dad, he's 22 today, my son, his dad was my drug dealer. And again, I looked for validation, thought I was in love with my drug dealer and married him and had a kid with him. Well, he was also my abuser. He's the one that held me at gunpoint for 3 days. He's the one that beat me and left me in a parking lot to die. And, it was really, really hard to like, he manipulated my mind so much that I allowed it. And here's this strong, confident person. Now I'm just allowing it. And that was out of shame. It was out of just all kinds of things. So when I got into a wreck, someone attacked me. They were trying to steal my car. I lost control of my car. I hit a woman in her yard and killed her. So when I went to jail and was facing that 40 years, it was it's one of those moments to where, I've never been suicidal, but to have the will to want to take a breath and live, because that you killed someone and you were the one in the wrong is hard. So I had to look around me and find something every single day, Rhonda, that I could be grateful for. Even facing 40 years in a prison cell, in a jail cell, I had to say one thing every day to keep me taking that next breath, to keep me wanting to wake up. And that got me through it. And it was actually my 18-year-old daughter at the time, my oldest daughter. I just missed her high school graduation because I was incarcerated. I missed her prom because I was in and out of jail. And she wrote me a letter and she said, Mama, it was an accident. You need to let all that go. Write it down and give it to God and let him handle it. This is my 18-year-old parenting me, right? So I did what she said. And that was such a release for me that I realized writing was my deal. That was my escape. And I just started writing, Rhonda. I started writing. I ordered paper and pen off commissary and just hand wrote for the next 7 months what became my book. Problem is, when I got out, I didn't do anything with it because I was too ashamed of that person. I'm like a cat. We're always land on my feet, right? For some, God always landed me on my feet. I was really quick to recover. And I had my nuclear medicine degree. So when they reduced my sentence from vehicular homicide to negligent, it became accidental instead of a violent crime, and it saved my medical license. So I was able to get back into the workforce, build up trust and respect around my name again, which I'm very proud of that today.
Yes.
And I didn't want anybody. I didn't want the doctors around me to know of that person. I was ashamed of her. And 8 years later, on the same date, September 18th, which is the day I killed someone, my first grandbaby was born on her due date, September 18th. And she got stuck in the birth canal and my daughter couldn't get her out. And she suffered a really severe oxygen deprivation and she came out blind and deaf. She couldn't suck or cry. She couldn't even hold her own temperature. And I blamed myself because of the date being the same. I let that devil convince me that that was my punishment, that that was my
That's
fault.
right.
And I had like one of those aha moments, right? Where I stood up and I just looked in the mirror. I said, you know what, Misty? First of all, God doesn't love like that. That's not how God loves. Second of all, he didn't bring you through all this for you to lay here ashamed. And third, they told you in rehab only 3% of a crack addict will ever see the other side of addiction. Here you are 9 years later, clean and sober, back in the workforce, getting your family trust again. And I had a reason, a purpose. And I decided that day, my little grandbaby, Eliana, she couldn't cry, she couldn't talk, she couldn't hear, and she didn't have a voice. And I decided I'm going to be a voice. I'm going to be the loudest voice I can, and I'm going to
I got
speak out. I'm going to
chills.
bring
Yes.
education and awareness.
Yes.
And it just completely changed my life. I took that book I had written, which was full of anger and blame. Like I said, I was blaming everyone else. And I rewrote it out of a place of forgiveness and accountability. And it just changed everything for me. One more thing I want to add going back is the reason I know that this is a God thing. The reason I know that this is my path that God chose for me is in the middle of the night, I was sitting in my jail cell and the bars opened up and a lady came in crying. She was drunk. She had been picked up for public intoxication and she was going on and on about her wife being dead and she missed her. She had died. She had cancer and she had been suicidal, tried to kill herself 3 times because of the cancer. And, she was gone and she was really missing her. But at the same time, she was glad she was no longer in pain. I gave her some food and a t-shirt to wear and I went to bed, talked to her a couple hours and went to bed. She came in the middle of the night when everybody was asleep, right? The next day we got up and went to breakfast when everyone congregates together in the main area and everybody's pointing and whispering at us. And we look at each other like, what's going on? And somebody hollered out, that's the bitch that killed your wife. And she looked at me and she said, you killed her? And I looked at her, I said, she had cancer? She was trying to kill herself? What? So she's like, but you're a nice lady. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. So God put her, first of all, she should have never been in the unit with me. That was like a threat on my life. That was a mixed up. Admin should have never let her in there.
That's right. That's right.
That's the first thing. Second thing is she should have never been in my room. That's the second thing. The third thing is she came in the middle of the night when everybody was asleep and nobody could tell her. She couldn't have any preconceived notions of me. She got to know me before she knew who I was. And
that gives
I believe
me
in my
chills.
heart, I believe that was God's way of
yeah,
giving her closure, because the prostitutes that attacked me told everyone in that town that I ran her down over a drug deal. And that was a lie. It was an accident. So it gave her closure. And what it did for me, Ron, is it gave me that one positive silver lining I could find out of that death, was that she was suffering and she was suicidal. And in my upbringing, I was taught, it might not be your thing, but for me, I was taught that if you commit suicide, you don't go to heaven. And so I told myself, you saved her soul. You took her life for her. Now she is in heaven.
Wow.
And that was what gave me the will every day to breathe. And I needed to know that, or I wouldn't have made it through it. And God did that for me. And God did that for her. And how powerful is that, right?
That's powerful. That is powerful, Misty. You give me chills. I tell you, when I heard you speak in San Francisco, I came to you and said, please speak for me. Your story is so powerful. And for you sharing it, I love it. It's just, it's deep. It's deep. And I thank you. And I just think, I just want people to know that everybody has a story. And just because I worked in the prison for 8 years, those women are just smart, powerful women. They just, things have happened, but it doesn't mean, and that's why I left there to do what I'm doing now, because I want women to be empowered and have a voice. So thank you, Misty. I really appreciate that. What would you say to women? To me, women that are suffering, women that are in toxic relationships, I always tell them to have hope. Hold on, the pain does end. People think I'm gonna be in pain forever, so I can't get through this, but that's not true. It's not true.
What I would say to them, Rhonda, is that you're a work in progress. And for me, What worked for me was when I stopped looking at myself as the victim,
Mhm.
and I started realizing that my story today would change a life tomorrow, and that I could actually use my bad for something good. And I made that shift.
Mhm.
That's when I healed. That's when the healing began. When you take that negative focus off of yourself and that victim stage, and you shift that to just put your hand out and reach out to someone that's just a little worse off than you and lift them to your level, that is so gratifying. And it makes you feel like you have value and you have self-worth and God's
Yes.
using you. And when you can make that shift, it's smooth sailing, because then God's got you from there.
That's
You
right.
just have to give into it. He's got
That's
a
right.
plan. You just got to give into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're
Stop
so
thinking of yourself as a victim.
right.
You're a survivor.
Absolutely.
You're a
You're right.
survivor.
You're absolutely right. And that's why I love your story. I love it. And all the women that you're helping. And I can't wait for us to do more work together. But
Absolutely, we're doing it. That
I
retreat
know.
for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely,
Yes.
Misty.
And you're in my book that's coming up.
Yeah,
We
I know. I'm
have an
excited.
anthology book. Yeah.
I'm
Action
excited.
takers who step up and speak out. So Dr. Rhonda's
Mhm.
in that, and letting her story today change a life tomorrow. It's beautiful.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So thank you for joining us tonight. I want everybody to know that these subjects are really hard. And so with Divine Table Talk, we try to do it where it can be private unless people just want to listen to it. Women in Christian Leadership is on a mission to encourage, educate, and elevate women to build a network, to collaborate, mentor, and develop leadership skills while supporting them spiritually and personally. So thank you so much, Misty.
Absolutely.
Now we'll
Absolutely.
take some questions and answers.
Yes,
Questions.
please.